Audio.
You've done 112C, 112D, 113A. That's a skyscraper. And if you try to go any higher without building out the foundation, it's going to crash.
Hey y'all, welcome back to The Struggle. It's me, Ryan, your host. How are you? I'm so happy you're here. New year, new you. Or maybe not a new you, but same you, new goals, and that is what we're getting into today in this conversation here with Coach Eric Hörst. If you are new to this Road to series, I'll give you a little recap here. This is a series that I do, Eric and I check in every once in a while, maybe 3-4 times a year, where we kind of go through my goals as a climber, as a very busy weekend warrior, dad, got a couple jobs, don't have a whole lot of time, but have big ambitions in this sport that I love so much. And so for the past year or so, the road has been to 13A, which was my goal, to climb my first 513A out at the Red River Gorge, which is my home crag. And I am happy to report, if you haven't seen the news, that I was able to send that project. I was able to achieve that goal. The road reached its destination in November of last year when I sent the proj, and I'm so proud of it and so excited about it. But you know what? I'm a climber, and as climbers tend to do, we hit the ground and we say, okay, what's next? And while I didn't do that, I didn't actually hit the ground and say, what's next? I actually enjoyed the send for quite some time and still am, to be honest. It's the hardest I've ever worked at anything in my climbing life. And so very proud send. I have been getting itchy lately. I've been starting to think, okay, what's the thing? Where's the fire? Because I do just love to go out and climb. I really enjoy just going out with friends or going to the gym and climbing. But for me, at least, maybe it's because I'm busy, or maybe it's just because I'm just so psyched and I really want to see how far I can push myself in this sport. I really respond well to having a goal, and I like to work towards something, and not just kind of a nebulous, I want to get better, but I like to have a thing in mind, whether it's a specific route, hopefully there's specific routes in mind, or a grade. I also just respond well to having a grade that I'm going for, that I'm trying to push myself to achieve. So that's where we're going to pick up this conversation here, which is, what should I do next? And a lot of you chimed in. I sent out a survey to the Patreon community. A lot of you spoke up and put in a vote for what you think my next goal should be, which I found very interesting. In fact, you all thought that I should be going towards things that I wasn't initially leaning towards. But then after hearing from you and talking with other coaches like Tom Randall and Nate Drolet and some friends of mine, and now hear this conversation with Eric, I think you're bringing me around. I think my goal, or rather goals, this year are going to be a little bit different than I had originally planned. And I'm psyched on that, actually. What a fun little surprise to have coming out of these conversations. So I will let you dive into this conversation here with Eric, where we will hopefully identify what this next road will be for me as I continue my rock climbing journey. And I think there's a lot of highly applicable things in here for you, whether you're trying to climb the next hardest boulder or gym route or sport route or trad route. Whatever it is, the grade doesn't really matter that much. It's more about finding ways to grow as climbers, to push ourselves, to do the hardest things we've ever done, and to enjoy the process while we're at it. And Eric talks a lot about the mental and emotional side of goal setting and what it means to push ourselves, and also what it means to have fun along the way, to clip chains, to top out boulders. So I think this conversation, regardless of whatever your goal is going to be highly valuable. I hope you enjoy it. And on the other side of this conversation, I will add a little bit more context for what I'm up to and what my training is going to look like for at least the next few months. So let's get into it right now with this new Road to What's Next with the GOAT coach, Eric Hörst. It's been a bit. I guess the last time I saw you in person was just after I sent the force, and we met up for a send beer over at Miguel's, and then, as life tends to do, I had all this peak fitness, and I wasn't able to take advantage of it because my sister's family came in from Australia for 2.5 weeks, and then I took this trip out west, and I'm still feeling quite fit, and I'm going to get out and have hopefully a few more days here at the Red at the end of the season to try to wrap up a 12C that I've been working on, and hopefully flash or onsite a 12A, which of course has been my secondary goal for the season. So, there's a little unfinished business here for the rest of the year, but now we're about to start focusing on winter training and planning for 2025. And I've had this goal for the last, 16 months or 18 months or whatever it was when you and I first had this conversation and said, okay, let's work on my first 13A. I'm really proud that I did it. There's many more 13As out there I want to climb, and many more 12Bs and Cs and Ds and, and beyond. And so, I don't really have much of an agenda here, except I'd just love to get your thoughts about where I'm at now. After I've done the thing, I feel a little bit aimless, to be honest. I'm not sure if you've experienced that as well, but I'm trying to figure out what's a good goal for 2025, and maybe even beyond, maybe what are some big goals that then smaller goals can elevate her up into. But yeah, I'm feeling a little aimless. Is that something that happens to you after you tick a big proj, that you've put some time into?
Yeah. I think it really depends on the person and just kind of how long they've been working on the goal. And, in your case, it was a pretty long journey, 16 months. And I'm glad you got it wrapped up when you did, because, the weather got quite unstable in November. It snowed a couple of times. And if you hadn't sent, imagine if you were in the position now with the end of the year closing in.
Totally.
It would be kind of a bummer, to get the good send day out there, given the current weather pattern and stuff. But yeah, I think it's natural when you work towards a goal and make a lot of sacrifices and really, try to stick to a hard training schedule and climbing schedule. There is maybe a reset period or a refractory period where you just mentally, physically, you need to reset. And, that's, I think, a universal feeling of athletes. You often hear people when they win the Super Bowl, or a golfer who wins the Masters, talk about, taking a month off and just enjoying the glory a little bit, and also kind of maybe letting loose a little bit. And then eventually they get refocused on the next goal and map out kind of a blueprint for taking it to the next level. But you know what? I've also noticed, there's a few folks out there. I think of Tom Brady, the famous NFL quarterback, where he would win a Super Bowl and the next day he would be back in the gym. And he's like, this is day one of the next training season. So there would be no reset time or refractory period for Tom Brady, because he was just so focused. And it was really a way of life for him for 2 decades playing in the NFL, that, his life was built around that process. And so to break from that process would have left him kind of aimless, I guess. And I know a few pro climbers that are that way, that can reset very quickly. One of whom was, just staying with me down at the Red last month. And he might take 3 days off after a trip or sending a project, but he's back, to the grind pretty fast. And after all, especially, the more elite you are, the faster you can actually lose some of that very specific fitness.
Sure.
You kind of have a higher cliff to fall off of, you might say. If you took a month off, sure, you can win it back, but it's best to not lose too much. And so that has been my message to you all along. As a route climber, first and foremost, you should never be too far away from doing some endurance climbing, because that's kind of that capacity that you need to project at the Red River Gorge is something that can be lost. But the best approach, especially you living so close to the Red, where you could just about any month of the year make a quick strike trip when the weather's good, you need to maintain that aerobic fitness pretty much year round. And so I would say, as a minimum, 1 day a week, you need to tie into a rope, or at least do an endurance oriented protocol like the 2-2 intervals or something like that. And maybe we're getting too into the weeds right now, but I think, with the end of the year closing in, this is the right time for you to engineer your training. And to do that appropriately, you also need to kind of reaffirm in your mind what your goals are for the near term, the next couple of months, and also the next season.
Let's talk about that, because I don't quite know, but maybe as I start to solidify some of those goals and where my psych is, we can then backfill and talk about how I might want to train. But I do hear you on, because I predominantly climb at the red, because just the season of life that I'm in with the kids at the age that they are, I can't really take a lot of trips. So the red is the home crag, and no doubt keeping at least that one day of aerobic climbing. Yesterday, I was out at the gym doing cave routes on a rope with Dr. Thomas Cunningham. And, I certainly didn't feel as fit or as snappy as I was about a month ago when I was peaking for my project. But still, that fitness is there. And he underscored what you just said, where he said, look, one day a week, you're going to maintain. A couple days a week, you're going to slowly improve. A few days a week, you're going to be making big gains. And so I may be moving into that one day a week as my goals in the winter here may shift towards bouldering. And so I want to run this by you. I haven't landed on any of this yet, but I put a little survey out to the listening audience after I sent the force, because a lot of people reached out to me afterwards, after our last little impromptu road to 13, the send, that you and I had the conversation at Miguel's. And I had hundreds of people reach out and say, I hope this doesn't mean it's the end of your conversations with Eric. Like, what's the next road? And so I sent out just a little survey, just like, well, what do you guys think my next road should be? And I gave like 4 or 5 options. And one was like the road to 8A or 13B. One was the road to building the pyramid. One was the road to V8. And one was the road to 14A. And so I just kind of threw all those out there. It was just like top of my head, just kind of throwing out, like, obviously, something like 14A would be like a 5-year or 10-year goal, but, 13B or a pyramid or, bouldering, those could be a little bit more near term, although my hardest bouldering grade is V5. So I don't know, it could take me a while to get to V8. But anyway, the responses were pretty interesting. People voted for all of them. I mean, all of them got votes, but the most voted for was the bouldering one. So the road to V8 got the most votes. And then the road to the pyramid got the second most votes. And then the others kind of after that got, a handful of votes. And I don't necessarily need to open up my personal climbing goals to a democratic process here to the majority, but I did find that interesting. And in conversations with some athletes, some friends, some coaches, I was just out climbing with Tom Randall, who of course has a long lens of coaching experience and history with his work at Lattice, talking with Thomas Cunningham, some other friends here. Most of my goals are route climbing. I mean, I'm a Red River Gorge. I'm obsessed. I love those long, pumpy routes, and I'm so proud of the gains that I made in my fitness, significantly because of the programming that you gave me with how I started with the 2 on, 2 off zone 2, and then kind of built towards, at the end of the training cycle, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. And I'm really proud of that. And that's the climbing that I enjoy the most, is that good Red River Gorge steep, pumpy climbing. But pretty much everybody that I've talked to, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well, have said, hey, if you want to continue to progress up through the grades, ultimately maybe up to, high 13s, 13 plus, maybe go wild and set a crazy goal and say, hey, Omaha Beach or whatever, you're going to need to become a stronger boulderer. And so I'd love to hear how that resonates for you, and if we feel like maybe 2025 is my year of bouldering.
Yeah, I mean, I think bouldering is always part of the formula for an effective training program. You can't just train pure endurance. That is a very limited road. But for the average climber out there, at least the people that I see at the climbing gym that are on a kilter board twice a week, but then they're out at the red, trying to send on the weekends, they're actually doing more than enough bouldering, and they're lacking in the aerobic training area. So, because bouldering is so popular and it's engaging and it's fun to do, it's social. And so bouldering needs to be part of the program. You need to learn to climb harder moves to climb harder. That being said, Ryan, I mean, what do you boulder right now? Like, what can you boulder in a few tries? What grade?
Yeah, I mean, I almost never boulder outdoors. So this is all going to be through the lens of a board or like the set problems at the gym. And so I could do in a few tries a V4 on the moon board and a V5 set problem at the gym.
Okay. So you mentioned Omaha Beach, 514A. the hardest moves on that route, the hardest sequences on that route are V4 or V5. So bouldering V10 isn't necessary to get up Omaha Beach. In fact, bouldering V8 isn't necessary to get up Omaha Beach. It's having the capacity to climb 120 feet of overhanging rock, which means a lot of aerobic fitness and also a pretty big anaerobic reserve. That's the, anaerobic lactic system.
Right.
So, bouldering V8 or V10 ain't getting you up Omaha Beach. Now, if you want to go do God's Own Stone 514A at the Red River Gorge, or you want to do Zookeeper at the Red River Gorge, then you do probably need to boulder V8 to do those routes. So, again,
because those are shorter, you're saying those are shorter, more powerful routes. They have more bouldery cruxes.
Well, they are more bouldery cruxes. Exactly. Right. So in any case, the bottom line is, if I was writing your winter program for you, it would include 2 days of bouldering. That could be set routes. I mean, I'm a big fan of kilter boarding. I think the moon board is classic and hard. Probably not the best training tool for you. I don't think. I think a kilter board would be better if you have access to one. The holds are a little more positive. It just feels like you're, more like the moves at the Red River Gorge. It's a better match for that. Whereas, the moon board is more pinchy, squeezy, weird holds, which is important that people learn to climb on holds like that. But it's definitely just a little weirder, if I can use that word. And,
sure,
whereas the kilter board is so user-friendly, just the nature of the holds and the movements make it easier to train powerful movements. And again, I think my experience with the kilter board is when I'm bouldering V6 or V7 on the kilter board, I kind of feel like I'm doing hard moves at the Red River Gorge, where you're grabbing fairly positive edges and making powerful movements. But in any case, regardless of what platform you're using to boulder, I think 2 days a week of that is part of your training program. But on the other hand, at bare minimum, 1 day a week of getting that capacity workout in, which could be done on a rope, it could be done on a treadwell, it could be done if you make a quick strike trip to the Red River Gorge, to get in, 5 pitches of climbing that's not projecting.
If I'm bouldering V5 right now, what do you think is a good target for me as a boulderer if I want to continue to ascend through the 13s and maybe even take a wild swing at 13 plus? I mean, just for some perspective, actually, before maybe we even get too much into the weeds, just so the listener knows and so I can refresh your memory, I'm 45 years old. I climbed my first 512 at 40, my first 513 at 45. How hard can I push this body of mine, Eric? I feel young. I think I've got genetics on my side. I've always kind of been, on the younger side. Everybody in high school had facial hair, and I don't think my voice had changed yet. So I may, genetically be a little bit younger than my years would suggest. And I'm definitely the most physically fit I've ever been in my life. But it's not a straight line growth that one can go on. The grades get harder and harder the higher you go. And so, 512 at 40, 513 at 45, what can I do at 48, 50, 55? I mean, you're 60, right? And you're still climbing about as hard as you've ever climbed.
Right. If you take care of yourself and stay motivated, you don't have any major injury setbacks, not let life get totally in the way, which all of these things are easier said than done.
Sure.
If you get all of those things to kind of line up for you, and there's no reason I don't think that you can, I think you can continue to gradually improve year over year to age 60. So you have 15 years. And
cool.
While 514A would be a great lifetime goal target, if that became the next road to, I think it would be just the stupidest thing ever. Because that's like a high school football player saying, my long-term goal is to play in the NFL.
Right.
Well, first of all, if you're a high school player, your first goal should be just to get into college football, like to play Division I football. So let's get you there first before worrying about the NFL.
The road is too long, you're saying.
The road is so long and windy. We're talking years. You're not going to send 14A next year. Can you do it by age 50? Maybe. Could you do it by age 60? Maybe. Will you never do it? Perhaps. It's yet to be written, but I get what you're saying about you are young for your age. You're just kind of hitting your stride, I think. When you first engaged me, I don't know if it's been 5 years now or what, you were a lowly 5'11" minus sport climber, I think.
Yeah,
and
totally.
So I've seen you in 5 years go from that to sending your first 13A. So it's been, quite an incredible 5-year journey for you. But again, each successive grade gets harder and harder. Every climber has experienced that. Going from, 12A to 12B is a lot harder than going 11A to 11B. And then going 13A to 13B is way harder than going 12A to 12B.
Right.
So it's going to be baby steps. You need to be thinking baby steps. And so the next baby step is obviously, 8A, 13B, but there's other things you need to do before you make that leap. And one of them, I think, would be good to boulder V8. So I think that would be a worthy road to. At the same time, we've been talking about on-sighting 12A, which I think you can do. If you haven't lost too much fitness, you could probably do right now. I think you're ready for that. But I think in terms of route climbing and getting you to 8A, whether it would be next fall or whether it would be the following season, 2026, I think building the pyramid is paramount. And with a side dish of bouldering V8, So the main course should be building that pyramid, in my opinion. We've talked about that time and time again, and you have not built a pyramid, Ryan. You've done 112C, 112D, 113A. That's a skyscraper.
That's right.
And if you try to go any higher without building out the foundation, it's going to crash. And so, I think building the pyramid, in my opinion, should be the 2025 mission, with a side dish of bouldering V8 and a side dish of on-sighting 12A.
Man, I like all of that. I really appreciate it. And I think, it's common, I won't even necessarily call it a pitfall, although I'm sure some would, to pin a goal to a grade rather than like a route or a bigger climbing objective. Sometimes grades are motivating. For me, I chose the goal of wanting to climb 13A before I chose the route of the forest, but that's what kind of kicked my butt into gear to get out and actually get on 5 or 6 13As. Mm-hmm. And then I did land on the forest, and then we probably could have retitled the series The Road to the Forest. But, for me, I agree the not only is it a skyscraper that I've built, which I don't regret. I think for weekend warrior like myself, the majority of my climbing is still in the gym. And so I've been building a pyramid, if you will. It's just been a lot on plastic. And then I get out to the red and I try to do that next big thing. But I'm excited for a season of building out those pyramid grades at the red, because there's just, as you know, so many insanely high quality routes, 511, 512, 513. So it's not like I'm going out and picking 1-star or 2-star routes to build a pyramid. I'm going to go out there and get the best routes in the world. And there's amazing 12Bs and Cs and
unbelievable.
Ds.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And I guess the question then becomes one of trying to figure out what that pyramid should look like. Do you have a sense? So as you noted, I've done a lot of 12As. I've done a handful of 12Bs. I don't know, 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there, maybe. It's not a ton. And then 112C, 112D, and 113A. And so when I'm looking to build out, like we're talking spring climbing and then next fall, do you have a general kind of rule of thumb that you work from? What could I start to target, do you think, in terms of those grades?
Well, I mean, I would like to see you send a lot of routes, like in the spring season. I would love to see you send, a bunch of routes. And again, I think if you can head into next spring season with at least the fitness you had when you did the force, not backtrack too much this winter, then, the spring season, which kind of starts in late February at the red and can extend through April or May, depending on how warm you'll climb conditions in. But I'd like to see you send, 5 or 10 routes in the 512 range. And let's not forget, you're now at a point where you should be on-siting 12A, at least maybe half the time. I think that's not a ridiculous thing to seek. You should walk up to 12As and kind of now have, not be in the mind of the Ryan Devlin 2 years ago where like, man, 12A, that's business. You should be walking up to 12A now with a little bit of cockiness and saying, hey, I've sent 13A, I've done a bunch of 12As. This isn't that hard. I'm at home on Red River Gorge 12A. That's my wheelhouse. So you should go up there and have like a boss attitude and attack those routes.
I'm still in that. I'm still in that 2 year ago thing though. It is funny, that mental barrier where I'm still like, oh, 12A, that's kind of tough, maybe I need to get out there and put a couple of those down.
Climbing is so mental. And when you fail on routes or have a tough time on routes that are well within your ability, it tends to be a mental thing that's holding you back, whether you're scared or intimidated or whatnot. So again, kind of reframing things in your mind from what you previously viewed, 12A isn't that hard anymore for you. You should go up there and have an expectation of on-siting or second going at 12A. So, heading into the spring season with good fitness, that should be your mindset. I think 12Bs, you should have a definite second go mindset. 12Cs, you might have a 1 or 2 session mindset. Maybe it's 3 goes in a single session. Maybe it's 4 or 5 goes in 2 sessions, but 12C should be something that you can tick pretty quickly. Yeah. So the spring season, if you're able to on-site some 12As and second go some 12Bs and maybe third go some 12Cs, there you're building out that foundation.
Rather than get sucked into a project in the spring, rather than take a look at my next 13A or the next 12D, which could take, if it was Tuna Town or if it was Easy Rider or something like that could take a season. So you like kind of, let's try to get a bunch of, you said maybe 8, 9, 10 sends in the 12s for the spring. I don't think Tuna Town takes you a season. I think Tuna Town takes you, again, if you return next spring in the shape you were in when you did the Force, I think Tuna Town can happen pretty fast. I think it can happen in a few sessions for you. But Easy Rider or, pick another 13 is probably going to be a longer road. That route has a few different cruxes on it, and it's quite long and steep and pumpy, and probably similar grade wise to the Force. So that might be a longer haul project. And and if you did jump on 13B, well, there's some 13Bs that are more approachable, like Golden Touch, which is basically a boulder problem. You climb 3 bolts to a V7 boulder, and if you can figure out that boulder and send it, then you just have to hang on through 12B to get to the chains. So, well, V7's out of my league right now, as you know. So, but maybe that could be a good one. It's interesting because when we were first talking about 13As, you brought up Maisie May, and that wasn't the route for me to project at that time. But if I am going to be focusing on my bouldering, bringing up my bouldering grade and my skills and strengths for that, Maisie May, for the listener, it's basically a high ball boulder. It's 3 bolts or something like that. It goes 13A as a route, but I think it's V6, V7. You did it pretty recently.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, so maybe V6 plus.
If I'm going to focus on my bouldering, then maybe a Maisie type route could be a good one in that 13 range because it's going to essentially be a boulder. I don't know. What do you think of that? Or do you still feel, hey, let's focus a lot on those 12 A's, B's, C's, maybe a D in the spring?
Well, I mean, Maisie May being at the drive-by crag, it's the kind of route you could go to drive-by or to Bob Marley and, climb a couple of 12As, 12Bs, and then it's just a short hike to get over to Maisie May and give it a few projecting goes. And, when you work Maisie May, it's like you're working a boulder problem because, I only stick clip the first bolt, but a lot of people stick clip the first 2 bolts, which basically you're then just climbing the crux right off the ground. You don't have to clip anything until you're past the crux. So It's really like a bouldering mindset. You leave the ground, you try hard for 1 minute, and either you do it or you fall off.
Sure.
So, but for you to drive 2 hours from Louisville just to do that, to boulder
Right.
on a rope, I think would be kind of stupid. But again, you could do both. You could go out and get some time. You could go to Bob Marley and do a 12A. You could get on Where's the Beef, a classic 12C.
Yeah, there's all those 12s in the cave there. There's Tacit, Eyeball, Betaville Pipeline, and then, Where's the Beef? And then, of course, you got Dogleg and Demon Seed. I haven't done any of those, so I could spend a lot of time over at Bob.
Yeah. And so it's easy to work or do a couple of those and then hike over to Maisie May and give it a few burns. And nothing wrong with that, but I think if you get sidetracked into investing a whole, like when you drive, you make that 4-hour round trip to the Red, I think you should be going there with the mindset of building out that pyramid, at least for the spring season. And then I think we reevaluate as you head into summer where you're at, how successful your spring was. And maybe you'll be ready to project the next 13A come the fall season, or even go after a 13B like Golden Touch in the fall season. But I don't think you can make that decision now. I think the decision to make now is what is going to be your training focus this winter, and what is that going to set me up for to achieve and help you continue to grow as a climber during the spring season of 2025. And I feel strongly the number one thing you need to grow as a climber, and probably what a lot of listeners need, is to build out the pyramid. So many people get drawn into the cycle of always projecting. Every trip to the crag is a projecting journey. And that's fine. That's part of the game. But if, I can think of a couple climbers that I won't name that at the Red are stuck in that mode and they just can't send their route. And they have, sometimes I see them such a kind of depressed look on their face. I fell off again at the 7th bolt. And, that's a bummer. Climbing isn't fun when you get stuck in that mode for too long. You need to win sometimes. That's how you gain confidence as a climber, to be able to walk up to the base of a route and have that kind of I'm the boss attitude comes from sending, not from failing. Failing does the opposite. It makes you question your abilities. And so there needs to be a balance there. And again, the climber who gets stuck into this constant projecting mode, I think in the long term really wears them down and doesn't serve them the best.
This episode is supported by PhysiVantage Nutrition, and I've been using PhysiVantage since long before there was ever even a podcast. I've been a paying customer for many years now. It tastes the best, and it does the best for me and supporting my goals in my training, my recovery, and my performance as a rock climber. I'm sure you all are familiar with their products. Their athlete team is crazy, from Alex Magos to Jonathan Segrist, Amity Worm to Daniel Woods, and so many other crushers out there are using PhysiVantage regularly. And that's because it works. I use their supercharged collagen every day before I train my fingers or I go climbing. I use their vegan Powerplex protein, which tastes incredible. The chocolate flavored protein that PhysiVantage makes is just crazy. That's like my sweet treat that I have at the end of every day. I'll either mix it up with some water or milk, or I'll mix a scoop in with my plain Greek yogurt, and it tastes like chocolate pudding. It is so, so good. And then recently, because I've been trying to build up that endurance for my long, pumpy climbs out here at the Red, I've been using a lot of their Sendurex, which is like a beetroot extract. It's highly concentrated. It is science-backed to help support the endurance system, and I'm feeling like I'm climbing longer and harder and also recovering faster when I'm using PhysiVantage products. So I think you're going to love it too. If you haven't tried it, you can get 15% off your order over at PhysiVantage.com using code STRUGGLE15. If you're looking to level up your training, your recovery, and your performance, I have really felt the difference using this stuff for the past few years. And I think you will too. Check it all out at PhysiVantage.com and use code STRUGGLE15 to get that discount. This episode's brought to you by Rungni. Y'all know Rungni. It's Magnus Mitbo's company. I love every single thing they make. Let me highlight a few of my favorite products right now. First of all, the harness pants. Oh my gosh, you probably heard me talk about these pants like for the past year. They are durable, they are stretchy, they are feather light, and they look fantastic. And now, oh man, I'm really psyched. They just launched a new version of the harness pants. It's like an offshoot. It's the harness utility pants. More pockets, elastic waistband for the perfect fit, and also improved sizing. So whether you're rubbing up against rock or trekking through the forest, these pants are tough, they're durable, and they are built to withstand whatever you throw at them. And I also want to highlight Magdust Super Dry. This is a new chalk that they just came out with. Super dry formula. If you've got sweaty hands, or if you're like me, you're spending a lot of time in the gym right now, this stuff will keep your hands sticky on rock or plastic. I love all of it. And if you use code STRUGGLE or that link in your show notes right there, you can get 15% off store-wide. Let's go. Obviously, sending the force was an absolute delight. And it also was a delightful process for me because it gave me something to train hard for. It gave me something to wake up early and be disciplined and focus on my diet. I really got a lot of pleasure from being motivated at that reach goal. But I'll also say that some of my best days out at the Red were sending things that were quite a bit lower than the force. That day with you when we were out at Midnight Surf and I fought my way to the chains on Babyface.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like I was so proud of that fight. And, you know, it was a 12B, which is a hard climb for me, no doubt, but it wasn't a 13A.
You did it quick. You did it quick. I think I think that was a huge confidence builder. Like, and it wasn't long after that you went and did the force, you know? So totally. I think it was evidence that you had regained your fitness from a few months earlier, right. But also doing it, I think it gave you this shot in the arm in terms of, you know, I'm ready. And I think I soon after that convinced you to start red pointing on the force.
Fortunately, you did.
Yeah. So, you know, so that speaks to exactly what we're after. So you actually have that to keep recalling in your mind as what we're after. And so that should be the feeling that we're after this spring is you go out and own 12A and quickly send 12B and 12C. I think that builds that pyramid. It builds confidence. That sets the stage for you, you know, in the fall to, you know, either keep building the pyramid with more 12Ds or to pick the next project and get to work and probably do it a lot faster second time around. You know, having built out that pyramid, 13A should happen a little faster next time than what it took, you know, the first time. It shouldn't be a 16-month journey. It should be maybe just a month. Who knows? Yeah. To maybe next fall do Easy Rider or Snooker, you know, or Golden Touch or, you know, some other 13. And like you said earlier, the beauty of the Red River Gorge and the fact that you live just 2 hours away is that, you know, I've climbed probably at hundreds of climbing areas in my life. And I don't know if there's any place that has more classic routes between 12A and 13A. It's just the Red is chock full of routes. And that's right where you're at now. That's the sweet spot of your focus the next few seasons.
Oh man, I'm so excited.
Yeah. So you're like a kid in a candy shop having the Red River Gorge in the backyard.
I'm excited to channel my inner Eric Hörst because you and I have climbed together quite a bit, and your superpower is so impressive that you can bolt to bolt something and it can look so hard and weird, and then you'll just run it, you know, the next time. And I mean, you are the king of the second go send, and also, you know, on sites and flashes and first goes. But I've just seen you time and again kind of run something, suss it out, maybe take a couple holds, come down, and then just fire it. And that speaks to the fact that you've been doing this for a very long time.
Yeah, well, yeah. And I think it's worth, you know, explaining to the listener why I'm able to do that is that, you know, climbing experience you have under your belt and the broader that pyramid of experiences, climbing at all different grade levels, you know, climbing, we have this infinite playing field. And the only way you really get to be a master of that is through a lot of accumulated experience on a wide range of routes and grades, and kind of like a chess master. You become a chess master, by really being a student of the game and playing anybody you can play to kind of, again, there's an infinite number of potential chess moves or setups or closes or whatnot. And it's only through accumulated experience that you become knowledgeable and intuitive almost with what the next move should be in a certain situation. And that's how climbing is. And if your experience in the rock is limited to climbing, hanging, failing on the same project over and over and over, if that is every venture to the crag, while you may eventually send that project, it's not the best way to become a better climber. Sure, you need to stretch your limits occasionally, but more importantly, we're in a skill sport with an infinite playing field. You need to gobble up experience. And the best way to gobble up experience is on-sighting, second going, and that develops that skill set out that allows climbers, once they have 10, 15, 20 years of experience, or in my case, 40, 50 years of experience, have seen so many different scenarios, and it just gets easier to figure out routes. And also, your move memory is like a muscle that gets exercised. And the more you force yourself to, like when I go up a route the first time with the intention of doing a second go, I'm exercising that muscle by, working the moves and memorizing sequences and quickly making little mnemonics to remember critical movements or feelings on the route, so that when I come down and pull the rope and go up for my second go, I've cataloged so much of the route in terms of what I need to do and how the moves should feel and what the strategy on the route will be. But to be able to do that only comes from many years of experience. And so, again, that just speaks to the importance of building out the pyramid. So again, my formula, I've been saying this for decades, is, I think I apply this a lot to my own climbing, but I also coach it a lot, is when you're climbing outdoors, let's just talk about route climbing for now. When you're route climbing outdoors, maybe invest 20% of your time into being on that project that's at your limit or maybe next level. But 80% of your time should be invested in the stuff which is, in your wheelhouse, right kind of at your on-site or second go level. And so that 80-20 split, I think you benefit from the best of both situations, stretching yourself 20% of the time and then building out your skill set by climbing and gaining experience on stuff right around your on-site level 80% of the time. And so maybe that's the approach you can take this spring, is the 20% would be kind of dabbling on a Mazy May or giving a go on Easy Rider, just kind of sussing it out. But 80% of the time is spent on 12A, 12B, 12C.
Yeah, I really like that because the point that you made, bringing it back to what you kind of started this conversation with, is it just feels really good to get to the top of routes and to clip chains. And I am excited for that season. So I'm psyched. I think it's a 2-lane highway here, or there's 2 stops on this road for 2025, which is building out the pyramid and also trying to lift up that bouldering grade so that those moves cumulatively feel quite a bit easier when I'm getting on some of those harder things. And so it's a road to the pyramids and it's a road to V8 kind of in tandem. And so bringing it back to a little bit of training, programming, nerdery here, does that look like 2 days a week of bouldering, at least 1 day a week then of route climbing? Or would you slice that up in some other way as we approach spring? I've got a couple of months here, probably before the spring season in earnest. I'll still sneak some days out at the Red, but let's just say I've got January and February for a training block, an 8-week training block, and then I'll try to get out to the Red as much as possible and climb some routes. So I don't want to let that endurance go, but if I'm wanting to lift up that bouldering grade, I'm going to need to put some serious time focusing on that element as well.
Right. Well, I think, I think for the short term, maybe the next 10 weeks, which would take you through the end of February, having 2 bouldering sessions, per week those would be kind of designated strength power days. So on those days, you could also do some hangboarding as part of your warm up, or maybe end the bouldering session a little early to do a little bit of extra hangboarding or no hangs, some weighted pull-ups. Again, strength power focused exercises done on the bouldering day. So do that twice a week. And then what I would really love, Ryan, is if you could schedule another 2 days that caters to the aerobic end of the training spectrum in terms of putting in your mileage, that base training, just like the runner putting in their mileage, a few days a week, year round, because you just don't want to lose, mitochondria mass and efficiency. And you will, quickly, if you start going several weeks without tying into a rope or without doing some spray wall circuits or something that forces you to hang on for more than, 10 to 30 seconds, which is what the typical, boulder problem is, 10 seconds to a minute, maybe, if
Right.
it's a longer set boulder route. If it's a kilter board route, generally it's 10 to 30 seconds. So I would love to see you do those 2 strength power workouts, but also the 2 aerobic conditioning routes. And potentially, if there's some decent weather windows this winter, one of those route/capacity days would be going to the red.
Sure.
And then the other one would be going to the gym, to the tread wall, or tying into a rope and climbing the routes in the cave, like you said you did with Dr. Cunningham.
Yeah, and that would be like 2 on, like the kind of getting back to the 2 on, 2 off zone 2 for one of those days, or going a little bit harder, you think?
Well, doing something harder like the 30-30 intervals, which are really kind of a max, that's power endurance. That's not something you want to do year round, nor do you need to do year round. That's what you do kind of that last month when you're getting ready for performance season.
Right.
So as we get to February, maybe you start to replace one of those capacity days with 30-30 intervals. And you did that perfectly this fall season to get you to transition and be ready for the force.
Mm-hmm.
We added those 30-30 intervals in, and I think a month later you sent the route.
Exactly.
So many climbers I work with, that is the perfect protocol to segue from what is initially a more polarized program. The polarized program being 2 days of strength and power and bouldering. That's very anaerobic, alactic, brief, powerful, near maximal, near limit movements.
Right.
And then the other end of the spectrum is that aerobic endurance, the capacity, climbing a lot of volume below your limit, not junk mileage, like people that traverse and do this arc training where there's like no effort involved, kind of a waste of time. Yeah, you might do that as a rest day thing or, as a recovery day thing, but to really maintain that mitochondria mass or to even increase it a little bit, you need to be right at that threshold where your aerobic energy system is virtually maxed out and you're just beginning to dip into that anaerobic reserve. And we find that oftentimes when you're climbing at an intensity level of 7, 8, 8.5 out of 10 on a perceived exertion scale.
Sure.
You find it by climbing on a spray wall on holds that get you pumped, but not pumped out. Kind of that pump you can climb through, that moderate pump that you can climb through. If it's a sickening pump and you're fighting to stay on the wall or you fall off the wall, well, then you've gone very anaerobic. But if you just have a light to moderate pump that you can climb through, that you can recover, on a route, that is perfect. That's where you're fully eliciting that aerobic energy system, to its max, kind of what scientists call the critical value, the critical force that can be generated aerobically. And that's where aerobic conditioning, that's where, again, runners spend a lot of training time in that aerobic zone. That is not hard interval training, and it's not sprint training, and it's not race pace. It's well below that. And so that's kind of where the 2 sessions a week should be. So you have that polarized program, let's say the next 10 weeks, where you're trying to take your strength and power and bouldering to the next level. You're trying to at least maintain the aerobic energy system. So that's a very polarized approach, 2 days a week of each. And then as we get closer to climbing season, then you start to remove a little bit from either end of the spectrum, and you start to really target that anaerobic endurance, that power endurance, which that spins up quickly. And you only need 3 or 4 weeks of some sessions of that, and you're ready to be in performance season.
Yeah, this all makes sense. And I appreciate a little bit of a deep dive on the science there. In terms of programming, would like day A be the hard board climbing, the bouldering and some heavy hangs, maybe some weightlifting or something like that? Day B, the endurance, and then day C, a rest day? Or do you take a rest day between?
No, I love what you just said. And that's how I train. That's exactly how I train. Today, I'm doing my strength power training exercises. Tomorrow, I will do my endurance workout. And then the third day is that rest day, where you could do, if you wanted to, do a little bit of weightlifting, if you wanted to go out for a run, you wanted to go do some other sport with the kids.
Right.
That third day is a great time to do that. It's kind of an active recovery day. It's not going to strain your climbing muscles or your climbing connective tissues. They need a day off. So yeah, I really like if you can arrange things that way, so that, it could be, Tuesday's your strength power bouldering day. Wednesday is your aerobic, climbing endurance day. Thursday is your rest day or your, antagonist training day. And then Friday, you're back to strength and power. Saturday, you're back to endurance. Sunday, you're back to rest. And so, you do that, you have 6 days a week committed. You actually have one extra day in there to take another day of rest. If you feel like you're running down, sometimes it's nice to have 2 days off. If you know you're going to go to the red, you'd probably want to have a rest day prior to that, not do a bouldering workout, but instead take a rest day prior to driving to the red. So you kind of need to keep your eye on the 7-day forecast as we head into the winter season. And if you see that one, dreamy day of, sunny and 50 degrees, and you have a partner to get to the red, well, then schedule a rest day the day before that, and then kind of work, backwards to how you can backfill your schedule.
50 degrees. That's too hot, Eric. I'm slamming off holds at 50. I need that sunny and 35. I know, I like it cold. I know you like it a little bit warmer, but at least at the sunny cracks. Like right now I'm over at Buckeye working on stain, and man, it's primo in the mid 30s over there.
Yeah, that wall bakes. The morning sun is so nice there on that wall for sure.
Well, let me, maybe we wrap this up, and this has just been awesome. I love this idea. 2025 will be the road to V8 and the road to the pyramid. And I think both of those goals will serve me as I'm trying to continue to push myself as a climber in a fun way. So I'll get some sends, but I'll also have some things that I'm reaching for. Do any routes come to mind? I think you mentioned Snooker. We talked about Tuna Town. We talked about Where's the Beef. Stunning the Hog came to mind the other day. Like I'm thinking about maybe some shorter, punchier routes if I'm going to be working on the bouldering grade. Wild Gift, I think you've brought up to me in the past as I think that's a 12C. That's a little kind of punchier. But do any routes come to mind that you think might serve me as I'm trying to build out my pyramid that could be good for me as a climber?
Yeah, I mean, Stunning the Hog's an interesting route. I mean, it's very much I think, you might start off with 1 or 2 bolts clipped, and then you go right into kind of a 2-part boulder problem that is probably, V6 or V7. The route is 12 plus, old school Porter Gerard climbing. I would imagine some people think it feels damn hard for that grade. So you're not going to go into that, expecting the second go, and I don't think. But it could be a fun one to get on. I think there are 12 Cs or Ds you might do faster than that. So, Stain's a good one for sure. You just got to nail down how you're going to get to the anchors on that thing and make the clip. That's kind of what it comes down. Like,
totally.
So I run into so many people that are like, I almost onside staying. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's almost because the crux is the last move.
Yeah, that was me for sure. I
Yeah.
almost second
Yeah.
goat it, but it's
Yeah.
the last move is the business.
Yeah.
So we'll see how
I've been there too. I was that person that on onsite was like getting, oh, this is going to happen. And then all of a sudden it doesn't happen,
right.
because like the business is getting to the anchors. But yeah, it's good. That keeps you a bit humble there. But yeah, I don't know. There's just so many to pick from at the Red. And, I think it's kind of almost have to let the weather help you make your choices. If you're going out on a 35-degree day, you probably need to be on a sunny area like Bob Marley, that, Where's the Beef might be a good route. Yeah. Whereas if you're going out sometime when it's a little warmer, well, maybe you go to the dark side and do American Dream, which is a really stout 12B that has both a bouldery crux low and then kind of an endurance, finish where it's just kind of resistance to get to the chains, kind of classic Red River Gorge finish.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main reasons I chose the Force is I was getting my teeth punched in on American Dream, and my buddy was like, hey, you should hop on the Force. It's not that much harder. I mean, that thing is a hard route.
Oh, I think you'll do it pretty fast, now with a new mindset. Again, it's something, climbers who progress quickly over the course of a few seasons have to really reset their expectations a little bit. Stop thinking that 12A is hard, because it's not that hard for you anymore, Ryan. You have to get out of the Ryan Devlin mindset of a few years ago and get into this new mindset of like, okay, I kind of own this grade. Red River's my, home area, and 12A is not that hard. Sure, any given 12A might be prickly in its own way, but you need to go up there with more of a boss attitude on these things because you're a different climber than you were a few years ago. That mindset is half of the battle of climbing the next grade, is not letting those climbs intimidate you anymore and not being apprehensive, but instead going up there with more confidence and willingness to attack. And that's something I would have all the listeners kind of reevaluate is, take an inventory of your successes this past season and really internalize the wins. So many people internalize the losses and the struggles, and that weighs them down. But the flip side of that is to really internalize and gain a sense of belief in what you achieved. And I still struggle with that a little bit, to go to various areas and maybe be intimidated on something that I shouldn't be as a veteran climber with my resume that I have. So I think any climber should be trying to reset their mindset or their frame of reference, because that is half the battle to climbing the next grade. And then the other half the battle is training smart. And I guess, again, kind of a year-end re-engineering of training is appropriate for most climbers. For most climbers, what you did last year at this time is probably not the best program for you to do again this winter. It might be just a little harder version of it, or it can be completely different. And I would challenge a lot of listeners, especially if they're route climbers, to consider what we just talked about a few minutes ago, was to kind of have a block of a very polarized training program that has kind of two significant elements, the bouldering strength power end of the spectrum and the aerobic end of the spectrum. Rather than just focus on one or the other, do both. Commit to 2 days a week of both. And that can be really game-changing for people to do. It seems to be like people go to the gym where they get into a mindset during a winter block that they have to just do one thing. Oh, I'm just going to focus on bouldering this winter. That's kind of a vogue thing to say. I want to get stronger this winter. Well, of course you want to get stronger, but if you're a route climber, the last thing you want to do is to backtrack and lose all of your endurance. So yeah, you'll arrive at the crag in the spring able to do harder moves, but you won't be able to get to the chains on anything. So you need to be a little more intelligent in your training approach and at least try to not lose endurance during the winter season while you're trying to gain strength and power. And that polarized approach is the best way for many people to do it. Now, if someone is just a boulderer, if that's all they're ever going to do outside, well, then there's not as much value in doing those aerobic sessions. And vice versa, if you're someone who's just, a recreational climber that likes to go out and climb well within their abilities at the crags, well, then there's less value or need to try to take your bouldering to the next level. So again, that speaks to the importance of having a program that's tailored for you, your goals, your time available, where you're at, so on and so forth.
Oh man, I'm so psyched. Eric, every time I talk to you, I get so psyched. Like I just want to go and I'm going to hop on the tread wall and just like pull on holds for the next hour. I really appreciate.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to be psyched when you get my bill for all this consulting. I've been keeping a tally of the coaching here.
It's worth it. Whatever it is worth it. I'm telling you, man, this is just like, as you noted earlier, when we first started talking, I don't believe I'd climbed my first 12A. I was a 5'11" climber, and you wrote me a little program. I reached out to you as a coach and paid you as a coach for a session, and you wrote me a bit of a program. And very quickly after that, I started not just rising through the grades, which was, kind of a byproduct of what the real benefit was, which is I just became a more focused and structured climber, both training and with setting my goals out at the red. And yeah, I don't know if you are taking on any clients at all, but if anybody's listening and you're fortunate enough to be able to get some of Eric's time, you should do that. He's also, of course, we were talking about the mindset being half the battle, and Maximum Climbing is a book that you wrote that I think is absolutely fantastic. And for anybody who's wanting to push themselves up into higher grades, whatever that means for you, Maximum Climbing is a complement for your Training for Climbing book, I think, and is a fantastic read. So even if you can't get Eric to actually coach you, you could pick up that book.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ryan. That's very kind of you to say. And, again, I think climbers today are so keen on training, and, there's so many great gyms available. Most cities now have multiple gyms to pick from, that I see people progressing so much faster today than they did a decade or two ago in terms of climbing the grades, whether it's bouldering or on a route. But I think with that increased rate of ascent, the place that people fall behind the most is the mental game. And that's why I've kind of stressed that today. Maybe that wasn't our goal today to talk about the mental side of things, but it should always be kind of something you're considering, because a lot of people are already strong enough and fit enough to send the next grade, but they aren't ready to believe that they can do it. Or maybe they have these other barriers, fears that are in the way and that are holding them back. And so I think that's something that maybe as we go through future Road to episodes, we can explore more about how to constantly be building technique and the mental game, not just strength and fitness, because, to be a good climber, you need to elevate your capabilities in all of those areas. And I think the mental side of things could be the weak link for the average climber these days.
I would love to continue to explore that. And I think it's one of the main reasons that climbing is as exciting of an experience.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's because it is such a complex game that it's so engaging, and it keeps our attention for so many seasons, so many years, is because there's always something new to learn.
All right, that wraps things up with the GOAT coach, Eric Hörst. I'm super psyched, y'all, to hop on this new road, or these two roads, rather. I'm hopping on two roads, one to the Pyramid and one to V8. And while the Pyramid one definitely seems achievable, because a pyramid, just by its very definition, should be achievable, I am going to set myself some bold goals for that this spring. And I'll share more about those in my monthly training plug episodes that I do that are free for patrons. Even if you're in the free tier of Patreon, you get those monthly training updates. So I'll lay out what I at least hope my pyramid will look like for this spring. And then the other road, that's going to be a bigger road, I think. V8 is not low-hanging fruit for this guy. So yeah, that might be a road that takes me a year or two. I have no idea, but I like it. I think originally I was saying a road to V7, and then Anna Hazelnut talked me into V8 because she just liked the 8 is just more symmetrical, and I can't disagree with that. 8 is very, very symmetrical. If I fall short of that, I mean, there's no really falling short, right? In climbing, like I'm going to get better and I'm going to get stronger just by going for these things that I'm doing. And I'm really excited about that. I've not had much of a boulderer mindset, but I am going to tuck in and pull like hell this winter. So yeah, very excited about both of those roads. We'll keep you posted on my monthly training update episodes. And in terms of what my training looks like right now, well, I just did a round of assessments. So I tested my max finger strength various ways. I did like a 20 millimeter 7-second hang, and I did some overcoming isometrics as well as some single hand lifts using my force board force gauge. And then I did weighted pull-ups, and I'm doing endurance as well. And so I'm doing like a bunch of baseline testing, and I'll share the results of those in this month's training blog if you are interested. And then I'm going to dive into some training. I'm going to work with Nate Drolet again, I think. I worked with Nate towards the end of last year. Well, middle and end of last year, he programmed some stuff for me to try to top up my fitness and my skills as I was going towards sending the proj, the force, and of course worked with Eric Hörst, and he helped me to program some training as well. So I'm going to work with Nate, going to work with Eric, and probably just lean on all of you to help me through this road that I'm on right now. I really appreciate your all's support. If you have goals that are similar, please let me know. Maybe we can exchange tips. If you have goals that are different, or if you've been down this road already and you're well on your way to your next destination, I'd love to hear from you. You can hit me up if you're a Patreon member. We've got a group chat, as well as you can DM me, or you can always connect with me through Instagram. I check my Instagram somewhat regularly. I'm trying to peel back a little bit in this new year. I feel like I'm on my phone too much, but if you send me a message, I will get to it at some point in time. So please do send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. At least for the next 6 weeks here, I am going to go pretty heavy focused on strength training. I did my assessments. There's lots of room for improvement. And so I think what I'm going to do is probably those 2 days a week of bouldering, likely on a system board, and then maybe an additional day of doing finger strength training, some overcoming isometrics and some heavy hangs, and then 1, and if my body allows, 2 days of endurance training. I know Eric wants me to do 2 days of endurance training. I think I can still probably get that in, but we'll see. We'll see how my body responds to all the heavy bouldering. I definitely want to have a good spring season and build out the pyramid, so we'll see how it feels, and if 3 days of bouldering / strength training feel like a little bit too much, then I'll go to 2 and 2. I'll do that kind of split or polarized training as Eric was talking about. And then in the summer, that's probably when I'll go all in on the bouldering focus for a little while, because I'll have some time. I mean, I won't pull out endurance training because I can't. Eric would yell at me. But maybe I'll do 1 day of endurance training and 3 days of bouldering in the summer to really try to achieve that V8 goal or get close to it before the fall season starts. So anyway, more on that as we get going. There's a lot of unknowns here. I've never really thrown myself into a strength, power, bouldering focused training block like I'm about to do. So let's see how this body of mine responds. I think I'm 99% slow twitch muscles, so it'll be good for me, but I think it's going to be a struggle, and I like this struggle. We like the struggle over here at The Struggle, and I would love to hear about your struggles. So let me know. Thank you for listening, and good luck with your training and climbing. Oh, and one other thing that I want to shout out that I forgot to mention earlier is this new show that I have created over on YouTube. If you haven't seen it yet, I would love for you to check it out because I'm working super hard on it. And it's called Struggling With. It's a new series that I'm doing. Every month, there's going to be a new episode where I spend a day struggling with a past guest of the show. So the one that just premiered is Struggling with Alex Honnold. He and I spent a full day together out in Las Vegas where we climbed, we fell, we took a huge rope swing, we did an ice plunge. He was a baby about it. It's really fantastic. We ate a bunch of donuts. I had the time of my freaking life. So if you ever wondered what it's like just to kind of hang out with Alex Honnold for a day, that's basically what this show is. I'm not a very strong climber, certainly not by comparison. So it's just a day of a couple guys hanging out, having some laughs, and doing some climbing. And I'm really proud of it. So I worked really hard on that. I would love for you to check it out. It's over on YouTube, on the Struggles YouTube channel. And that one's Struggling with Alex Honnold. Next month, I'm going to be struggling with Tom Randall. After that, I'm going to be struggling with Anna Hazelnut. And one a month throughout the year. I can't believe the people that have welcomed me into their lives so that I could just punt around on whatever thing they throw me on. We had a great time. I'm really proud of it. Thank you for checking that out. I'll put the link in the show notes. And of course, if you are a Patreon member or an Apple subscriber, you get access to all sorts of other cool bonus stuff. So thank you again for your support. This podcast is carbon neutral in partnership with the Honnold Foundation. They're doing amazing stuff over there. So swing by honnoldfoundation.org to learn more. And if you have a few bucks, throw them a few bucks. Speaking of a few bucks, if you have a few bucks, throw me a few bucks by joining as a Patreon or Apple subscriber. You get ad-free episodes, over 100 hours of bonus episodes and pro clinics and uncut videos and all sorts of cool stuff over there. Or there's also a free tier that you can check out and a free trial, so there is no risk whatsoever. You can join for a few months. It supports me here in the podcast/utility closet. You get all sorts of cool stuff. And then if you're not getting any value out of it, or you don't like it, or you hate the sound of me saying y'all all the time, then you can quit. Thanks, y'all. Haha. Okay. That is it. Shout out to Glen Walker, who helps me to edit these episodes, and to everybody who supports me and my work over here at The Struggle. You guys are just the best. I love making this show. It's just a dream. I love you. Have an awesome week. I'll see you soon.